world's largest retailer is downsizing. More than 100 Walmarts around the country Thursday shut their doors forever.
It's kind of crazy. You don't hear of things like Walmart closing.
Walmart says it made the decision because it just wasn't profitable.
Walmart just froze everything, and no one was ready for what happened next. The biggest retailer in America shut down its own facilities, rerouted its supply lines, and left half the country asking the same question. Why now? Prices surged, jobs vanished, and entire towns were caught off guard. But here's what no one's telling you. This wasn't panic. It was a strategy. Why would Walmart sabotage its own system? Who's really pulling the strings behind this shift? And what does it mean when the most powerful store in the world stops playing by the rules? Because by the time this video ends, you'll realize this isn't just about retail. It's about control. When Walmart blinked, it did not begin with a press release. It began with silence. In San Diego and Southern Illinois, entire Walmart stores went dark overnight. No public explanation, no corporate spokesperson, not even a warning for staff. This was not a retail strategy. It was a fracture in the foundation. Walmart had always been the one constant in American life. When prices rose elsewhere, it stayed flat. When recessions hit, it survived. When other giants fell, it adapted. But this time, the math cracked, and America noticed. President Donald Trump's sweeping tariff reinstatement sent economic shockwaves through the entire retail sector. Overnight, import duties reached as high as 145% on key consumer goods. Even after that settled at 30%, the damage had already cut deep. CF Sir John David Rainey issued a rare public warning. By June, prices would rise. By July, families would feel the full impact. The sting came just in time for back-to-school season, where items like Barbie dolls jumped from $10 to nearly $15 in a week. And it was not just toys. Bananas, diapers, baby formula. Everything Walmart used to shield from inflation was now exposed. The phrase, everyday low prices, had built an empire, but tariffs did not care about slogans. With cost structures collapsing, Walmart could no longer guarantee price stability. The very model that made it untouchable had buckled under external pressure. And what consumers saw, those locked doors in quiet suburbs, was only the surface. The deeper shift was happening far from store aisles. But what they did next wasn't a price correction. It was a total retreat. The quiet divorce from U.S. suppliers. The first clue came in packaging. Subtle, silent changes. Product labels, once marked Made in the USA, now said nothing at all. Long-standing supplier relationships in Ohio, Arkansas, and Pennsylvania began receiving fewer calls. Purchase orders dried up. There were no termination letters, just the absence of demand. Factory floors that had buzzed with life for over a decade slowed to a hush, while business owners waited for calls that never came. Walmart had not just raised prices, it had redrawn its entire sourcing map. To avoid the full weight of tariffs, the company began routing its supply chain through alternative markets. Orders once fulfilled by American manufacturers were quietly sent to Vietnam, India, and Mexico. In some cases, fiberglass replaced aluminum to dodge penalties. In others, existing US-based packaging was stripped away entirely, replaced by new, tariff-friendly versions with obscured origins. American factories, many of which had grown on the promise of Walmart's volume, were left in a vacuum. There was no confrontation, no warning, just absence. What made the betrayal sting was not only the loss of business, it was the violation of trust. For decades, Walmart had positioned itself as the great American buyer, the defender of domestic production, the one chain that stood by its roots even when competitors fled overseas. But under tariff pressure, that loyalty collapsed. The internal slogan shifted from Made in America to Grow with us. And us no longer meant the United States. It meant whoever could survive a 30% duty without destroying Walmart's razor-thin margins. Factories were not laid off, they were ghosted. And behind every rerouted shipment, the entire delivery network was cracking outside. We've researched Walmart's bold new strategies, and this could be the model for survival in a turbulent world. If you're interested in the big picture and what's next, subscribe to our channel. The broken backbone of distribution. The first hint of collapse wasn't a boom, it was silence. Pallet trucks idled at docks that were once in constant motion. Inside Walmart's sprawling distribution empire, from Elk Grove, California to Bentonville, Arkansas, the math had stopped working. For decades, the company had mastered just-in-time logistics, razor-thin margins, hyper-efficient routing, minimal waste. But with the new tariffs inflating costs on every inbound container, The system that once defined retail logistics turned into a financial black hole. Shipping invoices from Asia surged beyond projection. Fuel costs spiked. Warehouse labor costs could not be trimmed fast enough to offset tariff burdens. Every delivery became a gamble. When analysts tried to reforecast the model using adjusted tariffs, it failed every simulation. What used to deliver one of the leanest logistics operations on Earth was now bleeding money. Finance teams gathered for emergency sessions. Cross-docking operations were suspended. Even minor delays in receiving began triggering chain reactions of lost inventory, outdated data, and profit write-downs. Eventually, the decisions arrived. Quiet, unceremonious. Entire fulfillment centers in Ohio and California were suspended indefinitely. No press release. Just mass scheduled cancellations and parking lots filled with trailers going nowhere. Trucking companies tied to Walmart's network lost entire route chains. Small packaging firms were left with unpaid inventory, and in each case, the explanation was the same. The numbers no longer worked. Walmart, once the gold standard of scalable supply, had reached the limits of its efficiency. And the moment it froze its distribution web, 100,000 lives went cold with it. And those broken numbers, they were paid for in people's lives. The town that lost its future. Walmart didn't just leave, it erased the town it fed. In cities like Bowling Green, Kentucky, and Jefferson City, Missouri, the shutdowns came with no warning. There were no press conferences, no courtesy emails, just locked doors and vanished shifts. Forklift operators showed up to empty lots. Cafeteria workers tried to clock in only to find their time cards deleted. Trucking companies that had relied on Walmart's freight contracts saw deliveries vanish overnight. It wasn't a corporate restructuring, it was economic abandonment. The numbers were brutal. Within 72 hours, over 6,000 jobs disappeared across the Midwest and South. In some counties, Walmart had accounted for more than 20% of the local employment base. Mayors called emergency town hall meetings. State job agencies were overrun with unemployment claims. In churches and barber shops, residents tried to piece together what had happened, and what they learned stunned them. It wasn't competition that forced Walmart out, it was policy. The tariffs had made Walmart's razor-thin profit margins unsustainable, but the burden didn't fall on executives. It fell on the families who had spent generations working inside those facilities. Parents who once fed their children on predictable paychecks now stood in food bank lines next to former colleagues. The emotional toll ran deeper than job loss. Walmart had promised stability. For many towns, it had been more than a store. It was the reason they still had schools, sports teams, and main streets. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was personal. Because when Walmart shut down, it didn't offer explanations. It offered silence. And while America was grieving, Walmart's competitors abroad were celebrating. The allies who hit back. This trade war wasn't just started by America. It came back with interest. Within weeks of the White House imposing sweeping tariffs on Chinese imports, the European Union, Canada, and Mexico retaliated with their own. American-made goods, from jeans to farm equipment, suddenly faced punitive duties overseas. Walmart, caught in the middle, saw its already strained sourcing channels tighten even further. Shipping costs exploded. Canadian logistics partners raised handling fees to offset tariff impacts. Mexican customs clearance times doubled. Even apparel suppliers from France and Germany began renegotiating contracts. The rules of global trade had changed, and Walmart, long a master of global sourcing, was now operating in hostile territory. But where some nations pushed back, others saw opportunity. Vietnam launched a targeted initiative to lure Walmart's business away from China, offering expedited customs clearances and zero tariff entry for selected goods. Indonesia went further, rolling out infrastructure grants, workforce subsidies, and tax holidays. Procurement teams from Bentonville were soon seen landing in Southeast Asia, holding back-to-back meetings in Ho Chi Minh City and Jakarta. These were not scouting trips, they were escape routes. As America's traditional allies became adversaries, Walmart leaned into emerging markets, and it worked. Within 90 days, the company had rerouted over 30% of its global sourcing to new low-tariff regions. It was a strategic pivot that let Walmart survive, but it also had consequences. Walmart was effectively redrawing its supply map without the United States. Still, the most explosive retaliation didn't come from a foreign government. It came from the White House podium. The president versus the price tag. President Donald Trump didn't just call out Walmart, he declared them traitors. On Truth Social, he posted an incendiary message accusing the company of being unpatriotic, weak, and unwilling to stand with real Americans. The message exploded across social media platforms, cable news segments, and business channels. But it wasn't just bluster. Behind closed doors, his administration was preparing to strike back. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick issued a formal statement the following morning, insisting that corporate giants must bear the burden of tariffs to protect national interests. Treasury officials requested emergency meetings with Walmart's executive team. They asked for one thing: patience. They wanted Walmart to hold the line, absorb the costs, and wait for tariff negotiations to stabilize. But Walmart's answer was cold and precise. Charts, forecasts, revenue impact graphs. They made one thing clear: they could not survive without immediate restructuring. "We are not withholding patriotism," one executive said behind closed doors. "We are withholding bankruptcy." On Capitol Hill, congressional hearings followed. Members from both parties grilled Doug McMillon and his team. Was this an act of betrayal or self-preservation? McMillon remained composed. His message was subtle but cutting. "We are not saving profits. We are saving Walmart." But the spectacle came at a cost. Trust in Walmart plummeted. Conservative media turned on them. Loyal customers questioned their values. Shareholders grew anxious. And yet, while the public saw a company under siege, something else was happening behind the curtain. Because deep inside Walmart, they weren't just surviving, they were mapping a new empire. And with every new route, the company faced a new kind of storm, one they'd meet with code, predictive code, and the tariff wars. Walmart's smartest employee now runs on servers. After watching its global trade structure unravel in real time, the company didn't wait for politicians to provide clarity. It built a system that could read between the lines faster than any analyst ever could. Inside a sealed lab known only to top executives, Walmart launched an artificial intelligence platform with one core mission: anticipate chaos before it hits. This was not about forecasting sales or customer behavior. It was geopolitical survival. The system combined natural language processing, machine learning, and real-time supply data to scan everything from trade speeches and port logs to climate reports and customs databases. When a finance minister hinted at a duty increase in a late-night interview, Walmart's AI caught it. When a typhoon formed in the Pacific, it rerouted inventory from Manila to Jakarta within 24 hours. During a flash tariff announcement one summer, the system moved key shipments to avoid a $14 million fee spike. The savings were immediate, but the implications were much deeper. Walmart was no longer reacting to policy. It was outmaneuvering it, using predictive models that monitored risk at the speed of diplomacy. But this wasn't just a tool. It became a decision maker. Human planners were relegated to reviewing alerts, confirming changes, and refining thresholds. Algorithms started detecting unusual patterns. Rival companies stockpiling certain electronics, suspicious congestion at specific ports, correlations between grain exports, and political instability. The more data it absorbed, the sharper its insights became. Walmart, long known for its distribution dominance, had created something new: a tactical engine of real-time strategic warfare. The retail playbook had been rewritten, and Walmart was playing chess while the rest of the industry played checkers. But even the smartest code couldn't fix the damage already done to Walmart's public trust. To regain what it had lost on Main Street, Walmart needed more than data. It needed a voice. The battle to win back trust, they didn't lower prices. They rewrote the narrative. Walmart knew that a broken bond with American consumers could not be repaired with savings alone. So they went to war on perception. Executives took to the airwaves, congressional chambers, and local town halls with a singular mission: show Americans that the company hadn't turned its back. It had been cornered. Every week, new op-eds appeared in national papers, detailing how pricing decisions were no longer under the company's control. Behind-the-scenes documentaries surfaced, showing how a diaper shortage in Mexico was traced back to West Coast port congestion. The message was clear. Walmart wasn't hiding anymore. It was explaining. In a surprising move, the company integrated a tariff transparency feature into its mobile app. Customers could scan a barcode and see exactly how much of the product's price was linked to international duties. It was simple, powerful, and humbling. For the first time, the average parent in rural Kentucky or suburban Arizona understood how geopolitics raised the price of school supplies. To rebuild emotional loyalty, Walmart rolled out a points-based incentive program that rewarded purchases of American-made goods. The savings were marginal, but the symbolism ran deep. Every receipt printed was now a small badge of economic identity. Behind the scenes, union leaders and worker advocates were brought to the table, not to fight, but to help redesign Walmart's own internal systems. Labor voices helped rewrite sourcing protocols, shift schedules, and even pilot community-first staffing initiatives. It was the beginning of something Walmart had never done: vulnerability. Instead of spinning, it started listening. Instead of broadcasting, it started explaining. But while Walmart told a better sadder story, its biggest change wasn't public. It was internal. The machine had learned to adapt. Now the people inside the system would have to do the same. The warehouse became a war room. Walmart used to run on hierarchy. Now it runs on chaos, organized chaos. In response to its internal fractures and external threats, the company gutted its old operating structure and built something radically different. Flat, fast, and experimental. It began with nightly war rooms, no longer confined to silos. Employees from logistics, merchandising, data, and even frontline store operations logged in from across the country. A fulfillment manager in Kansas might review forecasts with a developer in Brooklyn and a packaging analyst in Mexico City, all in the same call. Mid-level bureaucracy was dissolved in favor of agile cross-functional teams. New ideas didn't need 5 signatures and a month-long proposal cycle. They just needed a use case and a working prototype. Some of the boldest ideas came from former employees. A laid-off forklift driver pitched a rehire pathway through local community colleges. Within 7 days, it was funded and launched across 3 states. Innovation surged. Pop-up logistics hubs, co-working warehouse spaces, micro-fulfillment lockers, all piloted in real time. Internal message boards became incubators. Failure wasn't punished, it was expected. Walmart's new operational model resembled a tech startup more than a retailer. Speed became the metric of success. Risk tolerance expanded. Strategy flowed up from the bottom, not down from the boardroom. Even branding evolved. Department names were scrapped in favor of squads. Store managers could speak directly to logistics planners without going through 3 layers of middle management. Everyone was authorized to flag disruptions or suggest adjustments. It wasn't perfect, but it was alive. The company that once boasted scale was now boasting speed, and what it learned internally had already begun shaping its global operations. And the rest of the world? They weren't waiting either. While Walmart reprogrammed itself from the inside out, a new map was being drawn without them. Rebuilding global trade without the United States. As Congress stalled, the world drew new lines. While American lawmakers debated tariff ceilings and subsidies, Walmart's foreign partners and competitors moved swiftly. Global trade didn't pause, it pivoted, and America was no longer at the center. Indonesia announced a logistics development program offering tax holidays and accelerated warehousing permits. Walmart signed within a week. In Colombia, a new inland port funded in part by Walmart fast-tracked agricultural exports directly to U.S. distribution corridors. Kenya offered renewable-powered shipping hubs tailored for Walmart's sustainability benchmarks. Southeast Asia, once a supplement to Chinese supply chains, became the new primary engine. Vietnam, Thailand, and the Philippines offered expedited customs agreements and stable regulatory environments. Walmart wasn't just sourcing differently, it was building a new global backbone, and this time it was deliberately diversified. There was no longer a single route, a single dependency, or a single nation holding all the cards. Walmart's buyers were retrained in diplomatic literacy. Procurement teams learned how to monitor geopolitical friction like bond traders. The company was no longer a passenger in the global economy, it was a driver. Meanwhile, U.S. trade policy had become background noise, nothing consistent, nothing enforceable. Walmart stopped asking for clarity. It just worked around the uncertainty. This wasn't abandonment, it was adaptation. And as foreign ministries watched Walmart realign supply lines without Washington, they realized something crucial. The post-American trade system had already begun. But what the world couldn't ignore was how Wall Street started reacting. The stock market shuddered. Walmart's shutdown wasn't just a retail maneuver, it was a seismic shock to the financial world. When news of halted operations and rerouted supply lines reached Wall Street, the market didn't flinch. It recoiled. Retail sector indices plunged. Port authorities revised their throughput forecasts downward. Rail operators and freight volume analysts scrambled to reprocess risk. And in real time, hedge funds with long positions in logistics, retail inventory, and supply chain financing began to liquidate. A freeze in Bentonville had triggered a blizzard across the markets. Credit rating agencies issued formal watch alerts on Walmart's supply chain-backed instruments. Debt linked to logistics performance was suddenly viewed as fragile. Major institutional investors began reallocating their stakes, sensing exposure not just to Walmart, but to the entire ecosystem that fed off its stability. Suppliers, distributors, warehouse real estate trusts, and even payment processors like credit card networks saw downward revisions. A pause in 20 states had become a ripple across global finance. Walmart's partners, companies like Procter & Gamble, Unilever, and Hasbro, were next. Order volumes contracted overnight. Insurance underwriters flagged risk clusters for any asset tied to regional fulfillment. credit default swap pricing adjusted by midday. The financial world hadn't just noticed Walmart's move. It had recalibrated itself in real time around the company's newfound unpredictability. The message was clear. If Walmart could no longer guarantee continuity, neither could the U.S. consumer economy. It wasn't a panic, but it was a reckoning. Artificial intelligence-driven supply chain models were helping to stabilize margins, but trust, real institutional trust, was now in short supply. And while the analysts rewrote their forecasts, Walmart didn't back down. It stepped forward, but instead of retreating, Walmart made its boldest move yet, the carbon pivot. In the aftermath of market turbulence, Walmart found an unlikely opportunity buried within the crisis: climate reinvention. The company had long pledged to reduce its carbon footprint, but the trade war forced action on an entirely different scale. What began as a workaround to tariffs quickly became a playbook for sustainability. Walmart electrified its last-mile delivery fleets, replacing diesel trucks with electric and hydrogen-powered alternatives across key regions like Texas, California, and Georgia. Its warehouses, especially those near Dallas and Phoenix, underwent rapid retrofitting to incorporate solar panels, on-site battery storage, and microgrid systems. These upgrades didn't just reduce emissions, they reduced peak energy costs and buffered Walmart against energy market volatility. Packaging was next. Multi-layered plastic clamshells vanished from shelves, replaced with biodegradable, recyclable alternatives across the top 100 fast-moving products. Walmart didn't stop at internal changes. It began issuing corporate bonds directly linked to decarbonization targets. These sustainability-linked financial instruments offered reduced interest rates when Walmart hit specific emissions benchmarks. For institutional investors navigating new environmental, social, and governance mandates, it was a signal they couldn't ignore. Even consumers were brought into the loop. Walmart's mobile app now featured real-time carbon impact scores next to product listings. Receipts printed in stores or digitally emailed included personalized climate data summaries, comparing product footprints and suggesting greener alternatives. The result? Consumers began making different choices, and Walmart gained a halo effect, especially among younger, climate-conscious shoppers. It wasn't just a clever pivot, it was a reframing of what retail logistics could mean. Walmart wasn't merely dodging policy shocks, it was transforming crisis into a future-facing, cost-saving, brand-building evolution. Yet the most significant outcome wasn't environmental, it was strategic. But green wasn't the final goal. Flexibility was. The antifragile supply web. Walmart's previous supply chain was a marvel of centralized precision, but in a volatile world, precision is fragile. That model collapsed the moment tariffs disrupted inbound shipments and domestic routes. In its place, Walmart constructed something far more radical: a self-healing, anti-fragile supply web. The company discarded the idea of monolithic distribution centers. Instead, it introduced a network of micro-fulfillment hubs, smaller, faster, smarter units embedded inside urban and suburban corridors. These nodes communicated with one another in real time, aided by artificial intelligence models that evaluated weather disruptions, geopolitical instability, port delays, and even labor strikes. When a hurricane shut down traffic in Louisiana, inventory rerouted through Mississippi. When rail strikes slowed West Coast deliveries, Walmart flowed goods through Gulf-based mobile hubs. Urban pickup lockers became limbs of this new organism, feeding off mid-size restocking stations camouflaged within industrial parks. In rural areas, Walmart deployed electrified modular warehouses that rotated locations weekly based on shifting demand signals. Each node adjusted in near real time, informed by predictive data on everything from consumer behavior to cross-border policy shifts. This wasn't just an upgrade, it was an architectural revolution. Internally, Walmart engineers dubbed the new system polycentric redundancy, a design philosophy built around one rule: failure should not cascade. If one node collapsed, others would compensate. Suppliers were pre-authorized in alternate countries. Inventory buffers were deployed like floating capital. Labor pools were cross-certified across regions. The system didn't merely react to shocks, it forecasted them. When political tension rose in Taiwan, Walmart preemptively rerouted microchip-heavy inventories to Malaysia. When fuel protests disrupted Panama Canal traffic, shipments pivoted toward African ports with surplus capacity. Walmart no longer had a supply chain, it had a supply web. flexible, predictive, and almost impossible to shut down. And that's when the company outgrew the system that made it. A company that outgrew the country. Walmart didn't just weather the trade war, it redefined the landscape it once dominated. In the boardroom, executives approved a permanent shift in capital allocation, 1/3 dedicated to sustainability, 1/3 to technological innovation, and 1/3 to workforce reskilling and supply agility. It was more than an accounting decision. It was a declaration. No longer was Walmart simply the engine of U.S. consumerism. It had become a prototype for retail resilience in an unstable world. Economists, policy think tanks, and corporate boards around the world began studying the Walmart case. Could this fusion of predictive technology, environmental reinvention, and operational decentralization become a model for global business continuity? Governments took note too. Latin American ports lobbied for expanded Walmart hubs. Southeast Asian suppliers negotiated for exclusive fulfillment rights. African governments pitched special trade zones tailored to Walmart's environmental benchmarks. The same company once criticized for hollowing out Main Street America was now driving multilateral infrastructure investments. While Walmart's disruption has reshaped the retail landscape, the real question is, who else will adapt and who will be left behind? The trade war, tariffs, and shifting supply chains are just the beginning. If you found this insight valuable, don't forget to hit subscribe, drop a comment, and share your thoughts on how businesses should navigate these changes.